Hello, welcome back to another episode of The Way podcast. I am Ben and I'm here with
Jesse,
Michelle,
Izzy.
Today we're going to be looking at, we're going to be talking about what Christian community looks like for us as a kid to now. Then we're going to be looking at some big questions, and then we're going to be having a discussion and disagreeing with each other healthily.
This section of the podcast is sponsored by Baby Jesus. So, Jesse, what was it like growing up in a Christian community?
I loved Christian community. I had amazing best friends in my church. My friend Hudson, my friend Zach, my friend Theo.
Shout out.
Absolute shout out. They deserve it. They were champions. But when I was 13 and I was kind of figuring things out, and I was off kissing girls on the weekend and drinking in school and stuff, they loved me throughout it all. And actually quite a big part of my story is I got healed. Initiated by my best friend Hudson, who sat me down and he said, we're going to pray for healing and we're going to pray for your leg to be healed. Long story short, it got healed, and then I started coming back to faith. So I've had a great experience. But what's interesting is, looking back as an older brother now, because my brother's in the same position I was when I was in year 9, and he doesn't quite have as close Christian friends, and you can kind of see the impact of that, which is, quite interesting. I won't unpack that too much because I don't want to expose him too much. But I don't know, have you guys got any experiences of not having Christian community?
Yeah, I do. There was a period of time where I just completely stepped away from faith. So I wasn't in church, I wasn't surrounded by any Christian community at all. And that did a lot of damage to my growth. And like personally, spiritually, I was just surrounded by just really, not so great influences. But that is a part of my testimony, and the Lord did help me find community when I asked for it. So yeah.
I think that your Christian community, or your community around you when you grow up, is so important and defines so much of your faith or who you are and your values and all of that stuff. And I think for me, I had incredible friends growing up, and I think I'm not really friends with many of them anymore, which for a range of reasons, but actually I look back at those time periods and they're just so special. It's actually like journeying with each other and like going through our first heartbreaks together and like learn about Jesus and doing youth weekend aways, and it was an absolute privilege. I feel so thankful looking back, and it wasn't like loads, it was like a group of 4 of us, or a couple, or like my best friend. It's just a couple people that God, and that's how God's always worked to me, is a couple people, like one safe person. Even in like the last year, I see that for myself. It's like actually it's those really special friendship that God really blesses you with, and that really does define who you are a lot of the time. So it's really important, actually, the friends we make, even growing up, really does define who we become to be, to put it lightly.
It's definitely set the standard for me as well. When I moved out a year ago and trying to find community again, I know that deep friendship is possible, and so I long for that and I search for that. And actually I'm lucky to have found that and continuing to find that. But that's helped me as I'm getting older as well when looking for new community.
Yeah, I grew up in going to this really small Anglican church where like a lot of the average congregation was average age of the congregation was probably 60 to 70 years old. And there's so I didn't really have many friends my age. There was a couple of guys that were there. But I think one of the reasons why I look back fondly at that church, even though they did a lot of things wrong, was because there's a lot of people that just looked out for us. I remember we had this guy called Andy, who he led Pathfinders. He was just this big Scottish guy, who he would bring in this bag of chocolates every week, and he'd do a quiz at the end of Pathfinders. He was the secondary school year, and if we won the quiz, we'd get 2 chocolates instead of 1. And it was just I look back, I'm oh wow, I loved the fact that it wasn't just me and the 3 or 4 other people that were my age. There's something about the intergenerational side of the community that meant that I was like constantly being fed, and like especially Andy. The reason why he like sticks out to me so much is that like when he actually moved away when I was like 16, 17. To go up to Scotland to live like near his family.
He's a Scottish man.
He's a big Scottish man. And he found when he found out that like my parents were going through a divorce, like it meant that we didn't really have much money coming in, and he would then send money to us every Christmas so that we could have a Christmas dinner.
That's so kind.
Yeah, and he, like I've never seen him since then, but he continues to do it just so we can have family like dinner at Christmas.
People are amazing.
Yeah, I think that's been the Christian community that I've been exposed to from a young age. It's not been necessarily one of like glitz and glamour, but of just like doing like hard life together, where like I just feel massively blessed by people in church, and so that's my experience.
So good.
Yeah.
Do you think there is a difference between Christian community and normal community?
There should be, definitely. I think with Christian community, it is a group of people that are loving Jesus, and if they're loving Jesus and living for Jesus, then that should be different, because we all have Jesus inside of us. So it should be like we're surrounded by little lights of Jesus, I guess. And it's like authenticity, it's inspiring each other, it's being honest with each other, challenging each other. And I think it's those shared values as well. And there's a quote that I like that is like, wasn't really a quote, but values determine culture, and if not, your culture will determine your values. And so if it's a Christian community that's actually like a thriving, Jesus-loving Christian community, your values should determine that culture. But actually, even if you're all Christians, it isn't necessarily like a Jesus-loving filled space and people, and that can be seen. Actually, sometimes the culture isn't actually that great. So I think there should be a big difference between a friendship group that is loving like Jesus, loving each other like Jesus, compared to those that don't know Jesus. There should be a difference. If there's not, then something's not quite right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's awesome, and it's so true. Who you're around does totally affect your values, and it's so biblical as well. There's so much Proverbs and Psalms talking about who you walk with is who you become. Like the foolish walk with the fool.
Wise walk with the wise.
The wise walk with the wise. But I also think another way that we can grow our values is also by stepping out of Christian community and stepping into darker, more secular spheres. And we can learn a lot by opening our eyes beyond our little bubbles. We can learn so much. I know this past couple of months I've stepped out of the UK quite a lot, and I've travelled around, and it's totally opened my eyes to so many new things. And it's changed the way I view God, and it's changed the way I respond and empathise with people. And it's the same with going out and into secular cultures. The secular doesn't have to be scary. Everything is God-breathed. People are made by God. People, like non-Christians, are made in the image of God still. They just don't know God. And like, so we shouldn't be scared of them, but it can help equip us and teach us in a new way. And so it's key not to just isolate yourself and be in your own little Christian bubble sometimes as well.
How do we welcome people well in church?
I think one good way that we could is by not only connecting with them one-on-one, but also introducing them to our friends that we are also friends with. So not only do they get to know us, but they get to know everyone in the community as well. And when you're not away, that they have a friendly face to come to. So yeah.
Well, you're not just welcoming them into your life, you're welcoming them into a community. And so you don't have to carry it on your own as well. So that's a super clever way of doing it. It's like, oh, you live here, you should connect with it. Like, let me introduce you to this person. You'd get on, and then you kind of leave them, and then you come back, and it's super clever, because you're not meant to carry it on your own, because we don't have the capacity for that. So that's cool.
This section is sponsored by Cain and Abel, where we have healthy disagreements.
Unlike Cain and Abel, where Cain killed Abel. Some people may disagree with this, but I don't think we need to be friends with everyone in the church. Thoughts?
You hate me.
Yes. Next thought.
Yeah. Do you not think then, like, looking at, like, when Paul talks about the body, could you say that you as the hand is saying to the foot, I have no need of you?
I think you can still love them, but I think you don't. I think friends is it's a boundaries thing, isn't it, of your friendship with them. You may not necessarily like click with them, you may not agree on the same even values, how you live your life, or you just, maybe they've been a bit unkind, but you can still love them. But actually sometimes a loving thing to do is to be like, I'm stepping back and keeping you at an arm's length. It's not being like, you're worthless, I don't want you here.
Yeah.
But it's just like, actually, I'm going to be kind to you, but actually also to be wise and be, you know, for me.
Yeah.
So it's keeping your distance a bit.
I think it's like personal capacity as well. Like not everyone can be friends with everybody, and some people like to keep their bubble smaller. Or doesn't mean like you're not gonna go and say hi to someone if they're, you know, passing you. But also you might have seasons in your life where you're just surrounded by your mentors, or you're you know being friends with, I don't know, wider community.
Yeah.
So
I was going to ask, like, do you think like our capacity to pick and choose friends at church is dependent on the size of the congregations we're a part of? Like, if you were part of a smaller congregation, would you maybe hold those same boundaries?
I don't think so. I personally think if the congregation is smaller, I'm more likely to get to know everybody personally, because I actually have the capacity to be able to get to know everybody. But on a bigger size, I don't think there's generally like capacity to be able to get to know everyone on a personal level. But
I think your mindset should be the same. I think it's like, actually everyone here is loved by Jesus, and therefore I will try. I will be like loving. You may not actually get around to everyone if it's a big congregation.
Yeah.
But even if there's people that are slightly a bit odd, or you feel are a bit odd, actually no, you can love them. I think it's the interesting thing is the different levels of friendships, and you see that even in Jesus, where he had
that was my point.
Yeah, you go. You have the 72, you have the 12, and you also have the 3. And as it shows that, no, he did all love these people differently. And it's not a clique that he has this 12 or a clique that he has this 3. It's just different depths of friendships.
yeah.
But the key to that is balance, because there wasn't specific priority in like measured time with Jesus with that. Like he found time for the 3, but he also very much found time for the 12.
Yeah.
And he spent more time with the 12. And he also found time on his ones. Like he found time with just him and God.
Yeah.
And that, but you look at the majority of Jesus' life from what I've seen, most of it's with crowds of people following him.
Yeah.
Most of it's with the 72. I think there's definitely, there's a limit. We all have capacity as humans, but we also have to trust that God is the one who sustains us, and God loves each member of his congregation. And so for the one who's lonely on the side, who you don't feel like you've got the capacity to take on and to get to know, but they're totally isolated, and you're like, oh, well, I don't have the capacity right now, someone else has to do it. Actually, you got to trust that if you take them out for coffee and show them the Father's love, because that is the Father's heart.
Yeah.
That it's
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, come on. That is the Father's heart, and we got to trust that if we take extra steps to show Jesus' love, the love of Jesus will sustain us.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And so, like, I know for me, I don't have the capacity for, one-on-ones every day with people, but I definitely have the capacity for a conversation with someone daily. Like if someone comes up to me, even whilst I'm working, and says, hey, can I chat to you? Sometimes taking 2 minutes and being interruptible to have a conversation isn't actually going to rock your day massively.
I'm going to challenge you on that, because it's all about your capacity. But what if it's not about us?
Exactly.
In our capacity, it's actually about them. Like I know what you're saying, and actually you do listen to yourself, mental health, if you're in a low place, whatever. But actually, at the most of the time, we should not be thinking of ourselves. It would be actually, how can we love others? What can I do to love that person?
Yeah.
And it's not.
Sorry, Karen.
But it's not about the main word shouldn't be capacity.
Well, ironically, that your challenge of that is kind of the point I was about to land on, but that it's not about our capacity, because if you're doing the will of the Father, he gives strength.
Yeah.
As we're having this conversation, I'm talking about the 3 and the 12 and the 72. Especially like from my experience being within churches, I think when we get into the habit of just hanging out with our group, like there's always going to be those 2-3 people who, because of their like social capacity, who like might be the odd ones, they will never be a part of a friendship group. And I would hate for the church to be a place where we just hang out with those people who we're comfortable with. And I do think that should be a challenge that we all take on. I've like met up with a lot of guys who I've noticed like are always by themselves on Sundays, and as I've got to know them, got to know their lives, they have so much to offer, and like it sometimes like really breaks me, like seeing these people sitting alone, no one giving them the time, just because like they don't have the social capacity than everyone else, but they're the people that really challenge me to love God more than most people, and so do always want to like blessed are the poor, blessed are the meek and the poor in spirit.
Well, the irony is we hear of these people on the street who carry church hurt. We hear about people who carry this church hurt, and they're like, I just never felt included in church. And our argument when we're like maybe evangelizing is, you just haven't experienced a good church. This is my church. Like, trust me, you'll be okay if you come. And then you actually look in your church and it's happening.
Yeah,
there can actually be like church hurt forming in our own circles because we're not stepping out of our bubbles. And so it's quite easy to point the finger, but you got to point the finger kind of looking inward sometimes.
Yeah.
You know?
That's all for today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. That's The Way UK.
Subscribe.
Bye.
See you next week.